Okay, we're group 1, and we're going to be talking about cancer and the environment, ionizing radiation. My name is Juliana Jazz.
My name is Claudia Bambarian.
My name is Jordan Rodriguez Anton.
And my name is Canavelia Rivera.
I'll be talking about what is cancer. So cancer is a collection of cells that begin to proliferate uncontrollably within the body. In this image that is in the slide, you could see a malignant tumor, how it develops over time. Here you can see that this tumor developed over 4 mutations. In each mutation, the cell divided and grew excessively. The number of mutations varies between tumors. You could see in this image that an in situ cancer is a cancer that is still within the tissue. And then once it becomes invasive, it's said to be malignant. Cancer and the environment. The development of cancer is influenced by a combination of factors. Some originate within the body and others are from external sources. According to the PDF, Cancer and the Environment, 2/3 of all cancers in the US is caused from exposure to natural and man-made substances in the environment. Some of these factors include smoking, alcohol consumption, poor diet, bacteria, radiations, genetics, occupations. What is ionizing radiation? Ionizing radiation is a type of energy that removes electrons from atoms, which then results in the formation of ions. These are some of the examples of ionizing radiation. There's X-ray, CT scans. These two are examples of medical procedures. Then there's cosmic rays, and these rays are rays that enter the Earth's atmosphere from outer space. There's radon, which is produced by the breakdown of uranium and can be found in most soils, meaning that this could be found even in homes. And there's fallout, which are rays released by atomic bombs and nuclear weapons. Like said in the previous slide, ionizing radiation removes electrons from atoms, which then results in the formation of ions. These ions then potentially damage the atoms and molecules that they encounter. These radiations can penetrate and pass through living tissues, which then cause DNA damage, which can lead to various health risks like cancer. So in summary, ionizing radiation is a type of environmental factor that causes cancer by damaging the DNA.
Statistics. First report of leukemia due to radiation was reported in 1911. International agencies for research on cancer monographs on carcinogenic risk to humans have found effect on ionization, radiation exposure to X-rays. So on the graph on the right, you can see a form of study conducted on mutation signatures due to ionization radiation, in which they were able to identify characteristics in DNA damage due to ionization radiation. DNA damage usually leaves a fingerprint, which is known as mutational signature within the genome. This mutational signature is what these researchers utilize to understand these patterns in cohort with 12 individuals. During the study, it was noted deletion of frequent p53 and RB1 inactivations. The study suggested that there were radiation-associated tumors, such as breast tumors, that noted chronological PIKSCA mutations. On the right side of the graph, you can see the idle likelihood across the genome, meaning the relation between deletion and insertion through the genome, in which chromosome 14 is utilized as representation chromosomes. You can pass the next slide. Alrighty, so radiation and nuclear health hazards. We can see that natural sources such as radon, they're chemicals, elements lying alongside the noble gases. It emits ionization, radiation, and harmful to human health. Radon emits alpha particles. Uranium and thorium are present in the nuclear cloud, which makes up the solar system and the Earth. Radium is considered a natural resource. However, many environmental or natural resources can induce cancer due to increments in somatic cell rates. The sun, for instance, if it's cold outside, the sun would make you feel warm. However, our body would still be taking in radiation for sun rays. Among medical procedures, we have CT scans, MRIs, mammograms, radiology, ultrasounds, among others. Radiation that also treats cancer, targeting specific small cancer cells by sending small dosages of radiation in order to kill these cancer cells. Another consumer products such as, for example, antiques, smoke detectors, fertilizers, and tobacco are also very harmful. Next slide. Alrighty, as we can see on this graph, we can see the depicts of approximated contribution on different effects on organs that received radiation between 1950 and 2010. For example, if you were to see in 2010, we see that there was an annual collective dosage of radiation more found towards more found towards bone cancer than it was found for breast cancer, for example. So you see the increments of radiation being targeted for those different types of cancers. This includes the radiation intake during medical procedures in which radioisotopes were administered. We can see this data performed every 5 years, which we see a noticeable increment. So as I stated before, another example would be, for example, bladder and bone cancer has an astonishing increment over 36% from 1950 to the data collected in 2010. As per the research article by the British Journal of Cancer, this is attributed to the introduction and more frequent use of nuclear medicine. Next. Alrighty, so ionizing radiation. CDC identifies ionizing radiation as an energy that removes electrons from molecules from air, water, and even living tissues. These are two types of ionization, natural and man-made. One of the natural spectrums, we have sunlight and radon. We have illustrative images on the right side to show ionization radiation and how it is on the higher energy spectrum, as it is available to penetrate our body to give us data of our bones for diagnostic purposes. However, these ionization procedures can cause an increment risk of cancer, which continues exposure taking place. We will be discussing the following categories within ionization radiation and its cancerogenic risks. Next slide.
So here is when we start going more into depth, starting with the frequency radiation. In frequency radiation, we're going to start with X-rays, gamma rays, alpha, and beta particles. High energy radiation affects our DNA and our cells. We encountered a study about the radio frequency that was done on military members. In this study, a percentage of frequency was utilized. Then when we say percentage frequency, we're referring to a cancer proportion in relation to the cancer numbers. This study was conducted in bands of 30 to 300 gigahertz in military members. Radio frequency is part of the daily life of military members, as it is used not only for communication, but electronic warfare. As we know that they are doing more just than just radio communication when they're overseas. At the end of the study, it was noted that around 40% of the cohort participants developed hematolymphatic cancer. This suggested a cause and effect relationship between radiofrequency radiation and hematolymphatic cancer, thus making radiofrequency radiation a human carcinogenic. Now we can move into the next topic. The next topic is radium, which is an odorless and invincible radioactive gas that is sometimes found in home from rocks, soil, and even the water. Most of the time, this material or radioactive gas is going to be found accumulated in our homes. And it's also the product of uranium. As the product of uranium, radium releases low levels of ionizing radiation. Radium, as is usually accumulated inside homes. There was another study that confirmed of over 50,000 Danish individuals between 50 and 64 years old that suggested that long-term residential exposure to radium plays a significant role in the increased risk of cancer. To be more specific, we found certain percentages, such as 6.3% of basal cell carcinoma, 0.62% of squamous cell carcinoma, and 0.64% of malignant melanoma. All of these were found within a 13 years post-exposure to radium. In several cases, individuals even experienced sunlight sensitivity. As per the research article, which was by Rio Dabets, there's a strong link between radium and lung cancer, considered a main risk factor even in non-smoker individuals, which is a scary fact, while a second risk for smokers. Alpha ionization radiation has also been linked to different cytotoxic effects. In addition to this, there is evidence to point that there is a correlation in alpha particle emission and damage on the epithelium in our respiratory tract. In addition to that, we have found within the research that radium has also been linked to an increase in tumor instability. We can move to the next one. Now, fallout. As we mentioned before, when we're speaking about fallout, we're referring to the debris as a result of radioactive explosions that might be coming from atomic bombs or nuclear bombs. And all of these contain several nucleotides. This mixture, which is the mixture of the fallout or the debris, is released into the air after an explosion takes place, and then it makes it down back to Earth. This can also accumulate on crops. Crops end up in our kitchen. Gamma rays in fallout are photons emitted by radionuclides. In this slide, we show the examples of Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombs. These two atomic bombs were detonated in Japan, specifically in those cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. This continued to leave radiation sickness for months in all the individuals in the proximity. There was a study conducted to see the effects of radiation over time by having a cohort of Japanese survivors, which it was 94,000 individuals. And there was found that there was a high incidence of thyroid cancer among children with high exposure to radioactive iodine. There was also noted that there was a rearrangement of RET and PTC, as well as in IL-10 gene haplotypes. As we have discussed in class, IL-10 inhibits some cytokines that promotes tumor formation and progression. In addition to that, there was an increased rate of leukemia reported within 3 years of the bombing, while others had a peak of 6 to 8 years post-exposure, with an increase of solid cancer within 10 years post-exposure. In addition to that, there were even Chernobyl survivors that displayed an increase in thyroid cancer in children that had over 1 gamma ray exposure to the one said radioactive iodine, with a higher RET rearrangement, such as the RET and the PTC1 and PTC3. Next. Lastly, we have medical procedures. This one is worrisome because medical procedures are becoming more and more common in the fields of diagnosis for us to be able to identify diseases. There are long-term and short-term effects that can take place with ongoing radiation exposure. As we have mentioned before, ionizing radiation causes DNA damage and cell damage. We have also spoken about the different rearrangement, the deletions, and the insertions that ionizing radiation can have in our body cells. In low amounts of our cells are able to repair themselves. However, with continuous exposure or exposure over time, the risk for cancer increases. It has been found through studies that fluoroscopy uses higher radiation dosages that can also lead to hair loss. Thus, it is imperative that we understand the risk that comes with exposure to these medical procedures. In addition, to keep track of the imaging that you're exposed to and you receive your results. Because, if you don't receive your results, you're going to keep going over and over through the same medical procedures, thus increasing the amount of radiation that you are going through. So always to keep track of your imaging. This is also to eliminate the probability of continuous and repeatable exams that is going to place you once again under exposure. Lastly, always consider the question options such as, is it necessary to receive this medical procedure? Are there other alternatives available? Can I use an MRI? Can it be an ultrasound that uses sound waves? All of these questions are for you to remember. Next.
Okay, so as we can see, ionizing radiation is heavily linked to the development of certain cancers and considered to be one of the primary causes of cancer. The factors that influence how ionizing radiation affect your body are plentiful, including the amount of dose received, how quickly it was received, the location in which it was received, and the sensitivity of the individual and their cells to these specific radiations. Go next. So the main factor that makes all these radiations so dangerous are the alterations it can make to your DNA. It can directly damage your DNA or cause your cells to repair themselves incorrectly, interrupting or altering important stages in the cell cycle, which is something that can eventually lead to cancerous cells. Go next. Ionizing radiation can create free radicals that damage DNA in single or double strand breaks. Repairing these breaks is where mistakes can occur, leading to a host of potential issues. Chromosome rearrangement is one of these issues. Common chromosome rearrangements include deletions, translocations, and inversions that can lead to potentially dangerous mutations in the regulation of key genes and enzymes. You go next. One such mutation or alteration is commonly attributed to cancer developments is that of the cyclin-dependent kinases, CDKs for short. which is an enzyme involved on the proliferation of cells, including those found in cancer. A 2022 analysis of CDKs titled A Review on the Role of Cyclin-Dependent Kinases in Cancer found that abnormal CDK activity is not only responsible for the creation of cancer cells, but CDK enzyme activity levels can also be used as a strong predictor in cancer for undiagnosed patients. Next. Okay. So, in summary, cancer is a collection of cells that begins to proliferate uncontrollably within the body. In conclusion, ionizing radiation is found in the medical procedures, nuclear weapons, and can even be found at home, and is one of the environmental factors that causes cancer by ions damaging the cells. Ionizing radiation can cause DNA damage and cell damage. And cell damage caused by ionizing radiation can lead to tumor formation and progression. And lastly, we'll just go over some of the references, as we cited many references throughout this entire presentation. And that should be it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.